take some questions. Yes, sir.
John with Nexstar. So while Republicans have proposed this plan to the president, you still have Democrats who are still trying to push certain different plans for federal spending. You're looking at things like FMLA. They're still trying to put that on the table. Is there still an avenue that Republicans would entertain those federal programs, or is that something that's completely off limits?
Look, the way the founders created this government, which is so amazing, the House passes the bill, the Senate could pass a bill, and then we could go to conference. Unfortunately, the Senate under Schumer, the only thing I think they've passed, what I've noticed is March is Maine maple syrup month. I don't know if they want that in the bill or not, but I would entertain that. There's nothing to go to conference with a Democrat idea. And the sad part, when I sit with the Democrats, their ideas are old. You know what they think? We should just tax more. But anyone who would look at what's going on, if you look at the 50-year average of what comes in from the taxpayer of America, normally we bring in 17% of our GDP. Right now we're bringing almost 20%. Do you know how many times in modern history that has ever happened? That much? Only 2 times, in 1944 and 2000. But if you look at how much this government is spending, on a 50-year average we usually spend 21% of GDP. He's at 23.6 going to 25. It is not a revenue problem. It is a spending problem. And anytime you want to talk about, these are the people that are defending Social Security and Medicare. Because the Congressional Budget Office says if we go the course that President Biden wants us to go today, 3 trust funds go insolvent in the next 10 years. Never in the history of America have we ever seen a 10-year window like that. Social Security, Medicare, and the Highway Trust Fund. Do you know what happens then? They automatically get cut by more than 20%. Mr. President, stop hiding. Stop traveling somewhere else. America wants an American president focused on American problems, finding American solutions. We have them here for you. Yes, ma'am.
2 related questions. You've named Representative Graves to be one of your negotiators. Who else will be negotiating for your team? And also, how's it going? I know it's only been half a day or so, but we're on a compressed timeline.
Look, I go in the room as well, and my staff, and the president has put 2 people in there. If there's certain topics come in, I'll have certain other members come in and talk as well. The difficult part here is the timeline. We didn't act based upon what Yellen said, because she said this was months later. We acted because we never wanted to be here. This is the worst way to govern. And I hope the American people see that the Republicans in the House do not ignore problems. The Republicans in the Senate want to take it up, but Schumer won't allow it. We take action and find solutions, and that's the way we want to govern. Yes, ma'am.
I heard you say just a minute ago he keeps going places. Senator Kavanaugh said she wanted to stop the helicopters, the planes when she heard him. Do you all honestly think that President Biden should not attend the G7?
Look, he's the president of the United States. He's a grown man. He can make a decision where he wants to go. And he could travel any place he wants. The only thing I know, if you thought for the last 97 days you were never going to negotiate, what are your priorities? I think America wants us to solve American problems first. He could decide whatever he wants to do.
Speaker, thank you. House Democrats just put forth a discharge petition today. Do you feel that undermines the negotiations?
Well, I don't think it's going anywhere, for one. Secondly, you're sitting here with senators who have 45 who signed it's not going to do it. So is that even sensible? Is that even being productive? Is that even reasonable? Or is that responsible? It seems to me that would be playing into a Biden default. I think America public is tired of those political games. You know, when we devised our bill, it wasn't a bunch of Republicans saying, let's just give these Republican ideas. When we talk about work requirements, Senator Biden voted for that. President Clinton signed it into law. We watched every study after the fact take people from poverty and provide a job for them. So we saw Americans lifted up. We saw welfare rolls drop. We saw more people have houses. More people could afford to send their kids to college. We saw the positive of that. When we thought about, what about limiting the growth of government in the future years, we didn't say we had to cut every year. We saw a Democrat Senator Manchin propose a 1% growth each year. We tried to grab things that both sides, even if they wouldn't talk to us, let's put something together to make sure it's reasonable. I will tell you, if it was Chip Roy and Dusty and I sitting in a room and we were going to draft something that we said just we want, it would have looked different. But we wanted to be reasonable and sensible. Does the American public think it's wrong if we simply saying, let's spend what we spent 5 months ago? But every moment I've spent with the president, he doesn't want to go there. He does not want to go back $1. I literally ask him, what is finally the number? Is it $40 trillion in debt? How much before you say, let's stop borrowing from China and not looking at places that we're wasting our money in? Every household does that, and we should do it too. Yes, sir.
What was it about Representative Graves that made you choose him as your chief negotiator?
Well, I've watched Congressman Graves. He's been appointed to our leadership table, and he's worked with all the different groups, and he's really been the individual that helped bring people together in crafting the bill itself of Limit, Save, Grow. So he has a clear understanding of where members are. So when you're sitting in that room, I didn't want to put somebody in that room who didn't have time. He is a former staffer. He's a former member working in government. He understands policy. Many people would call him a policy wonk. But at the same time, my staff is in there with him as well. So we want as many voices and many understandings of where the bill went and what we would like to see for a conclusion.
Will the congressman be able to make decisions in the room on your behalf?
Yeah, we talk very frequently. I go in the room as well. So I think if the administration can make decisions with the president out there, we'll be okay. Yes, sir.
What if there does end up being a deal between your team and the White House? What do you think is the most likely, or what would you prefer, having the bill the Senate first or the House first? Or
look, what happens now is, with Schumer and the president saying all along, I won't negotiate the debt ceiling, they have to be separate, you don't have the time to play those political games anymore. It takes so many days to get through the Senate, so many days through the House. We have a 72-hour rule, which I'm not going to break. I think the American public and all the members should have 72 hours to read what we end up with, if we're able to end up with it. I think the House should go first, and we can send it to the Senate. I know that the Senate, I guess, is out of session, but I'm sure they'll come back. Yes, sir.
President Biden just said he's confident a deal will get made, but he also said on work requirements he'd accept not anything of any consequence. Where does that?
I don't understand anything that has consequence. This is a senator who voted for work requirements. Listen, I think when you're sitting in the room and you're listening to the American public, why wouldn't he want to help people get out of poverty? But listen to really what he's saying. So the decision he's making in his mind is, if he doesn't want to have something that has consequences, he wants to borrow more money from China to pay an able-bodied person who has no dependents, not even to look for a job, not even go to school for 20 hours. So you're going to ask little Sam to make that $94,000 higher because we're going to borrow from China for a person who could go get a job to not help him get one. So what you're going to have is a supply chain that doesn't work as well, more dependency on China, and making America in a weaker position. I think that's wrong. So I wish he was here, then we could debate it even more. Yes, sir. Oh, you already asked one.
Are you open to considering a tax increase on the wealthy in exchange?
Did you listen? Were you here earlier? No, I'm not being a jerk. But have you read the CBO numbers or anything?
Yes.
Okay, so on a 50-year average, we normally bring in 17% of GDP. We're bringing in 20%. You know how many times in history we've done that? Twice. 1944 and 2000. So if we're bringing in normally 17, we're bringing in 20, that means we're bringing in more money than any time in American history. But what we're spending, for the last 21 years, we spent more money than we brought in. But instead of only spending 21% of GDP like we normally did for the last 50 years, when the Democrats came in, they spent $6 trillion. Now, I don't know if you're an economic major or whatever, but if you study Morton Friedman, he would tell you the only place that inflation is created is government. So that $6 trillion brought us inflation. So what did that do? Your money goes less. you have less money to spend. It doesn't go as far. We've had, of our 4 biggest bank failures in America, we had 3 of them in the last couple of months. Why? Because interest rates went up. Because the only way you curve inflation is you make interest rates higher than the inflation rate. So what does that do? That harms people from buying houses. That means you're paying more on your credit card. But that means every taxpayer is paying more because our debt. So we're going to pay more on interest. But he went all the way up to 23%. So we're spending more than we spent in 50 years, but we're bringing in more than we've been in 50 years. So I go back to your question. Having that knowledge now, would you raise that question again?
Yeah, but would that be a way to get
No.
some of the provisions you
No, it's very clear. You know what I told the president 105 days ago when I sat in the Oval Office? I have no preconceived notion of what we have to do in the debt ceiling except 2 things. We're not going to raise taxes, and we're not going to pass a clean debt ceiling. But we have to spend less than we spent the last year. So let's sit down and talk about that. But he decided, no, I shouldn't negotiate with somebody. I'm just going to do what I want to do, my way or the highway. That's not the way our government is designed to work. It's not the way business works. It's not the way your household works. And it's not going to work here either. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Speaker. At the beginning of the week, the White House came out sounding positive about progress being made. You ended up responding that you felt like you were very far apart. I'm curious if you can put now in terms of numbers, 10 having a deal, 1 talks falling apart. On that scale, how close are you to having something?
Look, I don't know on a scale. I'm not going to scale you. But I'll tell you this. Earlier in the week, all the way through this, I just want to be honest with the American public. I went to Wall Street more than a month ago to warn them we're not meeting. It's a problem. I went to you day in and day out, and you made fun of me. You're saying, oh, you just want to have a meeting. No, I didn't want to be here at this moment, at this time. Then we passed our own bill. We never would have had a meeting had we not raised the debt ceiling ourselves. We put an idea of how to do it. The only thing I'm more optimistic about, he finally agreed to something that every other time we've been able to solve a problem has worked. The structure of negotiations. But now we're along such a short timeline, it makes it almost harder. But if there's one thing you know from me, I never give up. I have the grit, the perseverance, and we're going to get it done. Thank you all very much.
Great job. Terrific job, Mr. Speaker. Terrific. Really terrific.